Welcome to this interview by Project Cargo Weekly. Our special guest of honor today is Mr. Tjeerd Veldhuizen, the Managing Director of SeaWorks BV in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. First of all, welcome, Tjeerd.
Thank you, Boo. I'm glad to be on the show, so to say, and glad to see you and on this beautiful ship you're staying at the moment.
Yes. I wish I was at the Rigmos Antwerp in Halong Bay. For those who knows the James Bond movie, as you mentioned earlier, it would be a nice idea. As you know, here in this Project Cargo Weekly interview, I always let the accused or the interviewee give a little bit of a background about how they started in shipping. So tell our viewers who you are, Tjeerd, please.
Well, I actually actually come from a shipping background because my father has been a master mariner his whole life, and when I intended to study transport and logistics, but I finished my military career in the middle of the winter. Consequently, there was no university open at that time, so I approached, or I saw an advertisement by Spliethoff in Amsterdam, and I reacted, and I was hired as an assistant broker.
Okay.
And basically, I had the idea, okay, I save some money, and then perhaps the year after I will start and enroll the university. But the work at Spliethoff was very, very interesting, and I thought, well, a little bit of more education or practical education is good before I enter university. And during that time, I was asked to go to Scandinavia as an owner's representative for a while, and that ended up to be 2 years. So when I came back, actually, I considered working and the fun of working in shipping so much more interesting than putting my nose in study books. So I decided to stay and worked for quite a long time with Spliethoff. And then once you come to a crossroad, and I decided that perhaps not my entire future will be at Spliethoff, and I switched over to a small startup company called NEPA. Mm-hmm. I was there when it really was just started. I worked there for 3 years, and then I was offered a partnership in a company called Trinitas. Mm-hmm. And Trinitas was an operating company with time-chartered ships, especially between South America, Brazil, Argentina, Uruguay, the Mediterranean, and Europe, and carrying primarily granite, cocoa, bone meat, everything you can think of, which went into break bulk. Mm-hmm. And after a while, in actually 1996, I took over the company and I became the owner. And then I decided to grow more into the project cargo side of the business. And actually, we started to time charter ships with heavier gear. Mm-hmm. And in 2000, I met the owners of Intermarine, and we decided to make a joint venture. Intermarine didn't have at that time a partner in Europe, and so we started with a joint venture called Trinitas Maritime Carriers. Mm-hmm. And I was the 50% partner in that, and the Americans were the other 50%. Mm-hmm. And this joint venture went very well. We grew very well. However, like many of us in 2009, we were caught by a rather terrible crisis, which also affected our operations. And then actually in 2010, we decided that Trinitas would merge with Intermarine. Mm-hmm. And so all offices, we had offices in Hamburg, Antwerp, Holland, Brazil, Rio, and Santos there, that they would all become part of Intermarine. And so I stayed with Intermarine 2.5 years, and then we decided that we agreed that we disagreed. Mm-hmm. Consequently, I left the company, and as usual with American contracts, you have a non-competition clause. In this case, it meant that I had to stay outside blue water shipping for a year. So that means I couldn't work in any deep sea operation, advice, brokerage, or whatever for a year.
Right.
And then in 2013, I restarted together with my at that time partner Stefan Pompe with SeaWorks as a small outfit, and we offered our service to ship owners who were kicked out from their contracts and had ships but didn't have the infrastructure to manage the ships commercially. So we worked together with a number of German and later on Swiss owners, and we actually managed their ships commercially, especially on South America, also to North Africa and some places West Africa. Okay. However, by time, of course, these ships were taken by the banks, sold, and so on. So nowadays, what we do at SeaWorks is mainly, we contract cargoes. We work together with the cargo owners to find the best solution. We work out their contracts, their charter parties, and we organize the transport of difficult cargo. So that means everything which does not fit into a container. Okay. That is mainly on South America. Besides the operation on that is mainly done from Europe, we have a cooperation since 2014 with Hongfa Shipping of Shanghai, where we are their partner in Europe, except Germany. So we have liaison with all the European industries in France, Spain, Holland, England, and our office in Santos is the operational and commercial agent for whole Brazil. Okay. So all the ships of Hongfa which call in Brazil are handled by that office operationally, and we book all the Brazilian accounts for Hongfa as well. So we, perhaps the listeners know, Hongfa Shipping is a fast-growing break bulk specialist project carrier from Far East, Southeast Asia into East Coast and West Coast South America and return. So in a nutshell, that is the background.
Okay,
and,
so
personally, I'm a arbitrator with the LMAA, and I do also advisory work for people who have, how shall I say, run into contractual shipping problems.
Right. That's a very interesting and long-standing career that you have, Tjeerd, I must say. And as we all know, in Holland, there are really some very notable and very high visible companies in project cargo, Splithof, Big Lift, and all of these. They are have a good reputation, and you're certainly part of that, let's say, grouping, so to speak. But tell me, this company Hongfa that you represent, tell me about the type of ships that they run and the services, let's say, they provide on a regular basis.
Right. Well, the Hongfa, I know. Let's say Hongfa's background, which you might know, is emerging from Chippewa, the Chinese-Polish joint venture. Yep. And Hongfa is the Chinese side of the operation. Yep. They came, what was it, 6 years ago, and I was asked that whether I had an idea what they could do with their ships, which they were going to be delivered for. Those ships are 36,000 tonners, 3 hold hatches, enormous wide hatches. They have about 8,200, 8,500 square meter under deck space. So that's really enormous.
That's big.
They have gear up to 520 metric tons lifting capacity. They can sail as box-shaped open hatch bulk carriers if they remove the pontoons. So when they came to me and they said, well, we are looking at an area where we don't compete with Chippewa, we don't compete really with Costco. We heard about your reputation on South America. Can you perhaps have an idea? And then I actually suggested that we would run a pendular service between Far East and East Coast South America via South Africa, because then you also have the advantage that you can always load deck cargo for South Africa on your way to Brazil or to Argentina.
Right.
Actually, the concept was received positively, and actually on that basis we have been at first the agents for whole South America, but that's a little bit big, as you can imagine. So yeah. We scaled it down to Brazil, which is also an enormous country, and we do also the commercial work in Europe for the cross bookings and European clients. And these ships are, I must say, they run very, very well. They run timely. There's no delays. So what we do, we book, you can imagine, we book break bulk, we book extraordinary long pipes, windmill equipment, big bags, mining parts. Well, I mean, say something of a cargo and I don't think we haven't carried it.
Right.
And then we arrive in South America, and there we set up the trading with logs back to South America, or back to China.
Okay.
And as you may know, that China is well, I always say it seems like they eat logs, because it's really enormous quantities of log shipments.
Yeah.
So we have set up a number of those shipments. The unfortunate thing is that the Chinese receivers then found out that this is carried by a Chinese carrier. So all the cargoes are now sold FOB, and the Chinese make a nice deal. However, we still have quite a lot of regular shipments back to Far East, where we carry project cargo, which, as you may know, in Brazil, you have this local content. So if there is a rig or FPSO built in China, part of the cargoes or part of the rig and the FPSOs have to be first made in Brazil, then shipped to China or Vietnam, placed on the rig or the FPSO, and then they come up to a sort of local content under which terms the rig or the FPSO may be used in Brazil without paying the taxes.
Oh, yeah. Right. Right. It's strange that we shipping people have to think of these kind of local regulations. It becomes like we are administrators sometimes more than shipping people. But it's an interesting concept. I mean, with Hongfa and that you represent them, what would be the typical ports of call for our viewers here to understand? So you would ports of call in China, South Africa, and then Brazil. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it's well, we are talking main ports like, of course, Shanghai, which is presently congested. So you have Taichung or Nantong, which are used. Then you have Tianjin, big in windmill equipment. You have Qingdao, in the north. So these are the big export areas where we usually load. Sometimes we call Vietnam for some part cargoes on deck, and then if depends a little bit how the stowage is, whether there's a lot of deck space required for South America, but otherwise it happens a lot that which is not unfortunately booked by ourselves, but that's a Chinese shipment then. Which means blades to South America, which can be Saldanha Bay or the Durban area. Yeah. And then from there, they cross over to South America, where the usual ports are like Santos, Rio de Janeiro, Vitória. However, right now we have a ship discharging in Pecém in the north, and then the ship will continue to Belém on the Amazon entrance. And then other ports are like Paranaguá, Rio Grande do Sul, and then also you have Montevideo. If there's, we called quite regularly with the new paper factory being built there, which has been, as you may know, a Metsa factory, but most parts or a lot of parts come from Far Eastern, so Chinese produced areas. And then you have they call also Argentina, which is at the moment rather poor because of the economy there. But then you talk Cerrati and Buenos Aires.
Okay, that's very clear. Would you say that the company that you own, SeaWorks, would you call yourself an agent, a broker, a freight forwarder, or are you all in one-stop shop? You represent, of course, some ship owners. How
Right.
would you nominate yourself?
Well, you know, in the past, it's not a broker work in such, because with the area where we concentrate on, South America and here in Europe, we have such an in-depth knowledge that we can advise, you know, clients far beyond that. It's, you know, the rate has to be X and you pay Y and so on. We can advise them, and we do that actually always. That, mind you, if you ship to Paranagua, you face this and this and this. If you think about that terminal, mind you, these are the problems you can have. Cargo wise, you know, think about it, that you, with your notices, with your certificates and these kind of things, because the easiest way is, of course, to broker a deal and say, you know, the cargo is fixed from A to B, the cargo is loaded, you send your bill and you get paid. But then when, you know, issues occur, and I don't say every shipment has an issue, but it has, you know, it's very important that the contractual chain, but also the paper contract is correctly issued. Yeah. And so it's not brokerage, it's not forwarding, but it's a advisory work where the quality of the shipment and the say the clients will not have a headache with their shipments.
Okay, so basically, I would say, from coming from the outside, you represent some reputable ship owners, and you are also a consultant. Let's say that I'm a project freight forwarder. I have a huge project. Maybe the Hongfa ships are not suitable for this particular project, but I could still ask you for advice on where to go in the market, couldn't I?
That is possible. Yes.
You have the know-how.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, that is. We have over the years, very interestingly, had some clients with whom we shipped their products, and then they had this, they had it in a different trade lane, and so they came to us and said, "Well, can you help us?" And we said, yes, but we are not familiar with the trade lane, so we're not going to, don't expect from us that we charter in ships or that we organize, because we are good in what we are doing in a certain area. Yeah. And then they said, yeah, but then we want you to take care of our, contract. So if we have a contract with a ship owner, or if we have something in the port, can you help us out? And that's where we grew with a number of clients, where we nowadays, for their worldwide requirements. So some of them have special pipes, for instance, out of China or out of the United Arab area to various destinations, and they send us their contracts. So we scrutinize them whether their risks are limited, or at least that they know where they say yes to. And that is, as you may know, some people say yes because the price is right, and then they find out that their contract is completely different from the price, and they were they pay dearly afterwards, because the small print is giving the owner or the carrier lots of surcharge possibilities.
I have a feeling that I should have known you, Tjeerd, during my first marriage, because I think you could have made the contract better.
Well, I'm trying to stay away from personal this kind of personal things, because that's mostly emotion. And
yes, I know. I'm just joking with you, but sometimes it almost sounds the same, that you enter into a contract and you have to be sure what you actually say yes to. But listen, that's very interesting. And one thing I noticed from your great introduction was that you are also a mediator. Not long ago, I had an interview with a lawyer, a Danish friend of mine sitting in Singapore, and he mentioned a little bit of the same. So that means that people can come to you instead of going to court, and it takes forever, and you never know whether it'll be treated by a professional. People have a claim, they could come to you, and you could be the neutral part between two parties to solve it, couldn't you?
Yes, well, indeed. What happens often in a contract is that, well, I of course, this is all by experience as well. And I tell you this short story how I came into this whole mediation and arbitration thing, is that I once had a trader or would-be trader who wanted to ship cocoa from Brazil to Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a quantity over 6 months of 12,000 tons.
Mm-hmm.
And then when the guy came to me, I said to him, listen, I know there's this, broomstick disease in Brazil. So 12,000 tons of cocoa is quite an amount nowadays because, the harvests were quite poor because of the sickness. And he said, no, I can purchase 12,000 tons and I want to have a price. I said, well, is it perhaps an idea that we book the first 2,000 tons and then we say the other 10,000 tons are subject to declaration of 30 days or 60 days in advance? Yeah. He said, no, because then you charge me a high price for the 2,000 and I want to have a cheapest rate as possible. Mm-hmm. So we came to an agreement on the 12,000 tons, which was a straightforward contract, right? No subs, no nothing. The first shipment, of course, was a complete cock-up because he only had 500 tons because of this broomstick sickness in Brazil. That entered into a claim, and well, I spare you the details. However, at one moment after 3 or 4 years of arbitration and lawyers and whatever, I took a new lawyer, and the guy was an elderly lawyer, and he said to me, show me your claim. And I said, well, that's about 2.5 meters behind me. And he said, no, show me the claim when you spoke last with your opponent. I said, well, 2.5 meters behind me. And he said, no. People forget, when you're in love, you write. And when you have a problem, you talk.
Yeah, correct.
So if people would come to me with a problem, first thing I want to establish with them is that, okay, you entered into a contract, and this contract is what you wrote down, what you had agreed, when you were in love, this is what you wrote down, right?
Yeah.
They can't say no because they entered into the contract. So then it is the art of, from the contract coming to a consensus where you can solve the issue. And if the issue can be solved and on basis of the contract, it may hurt both parties a bit, but better to have, both a little bit of hurt feelings than that you are ending up with a lawyer bill of $50,000 or $100,000, an arbitration award which is, not satisfying, and you'll never do business again with each other.
Yeah. No, I think you're onto something right. I mean, as you know yourself, Tjeerd, I run a network of some 240 project forwarders around the world, and sometimes the claims are not necessarily very big, but they're time consuming. And I know that sometimes you're in the right, you won't go to a lawyer because it takes forever and you have to go through the court system. Forget it. Your way of solving problems by mediating, and if you are a professional to do it, is much, much faster. And everybody, they might not get what they want, but at least they get a closure, as they say, right?
Well, I think it's the same like you referred to your first marriage, and I can imagine the people who have, I'm not divorced, but I have close friends who are divorced, where at first the two married ones say, okay, I'm leaving you or whatever. Yeah. At first, they said, well, we do it on friendly terms, and soon, of course, the sparks of the beginning fire emerge. Yeah. So I always say that if you go to a mediator from the beginning, he or she can extinguish these sparks during talks and see where there's common ground where you can work from. Yeah. But if you try to solve it yourself, soon the sparks are there. You call in a lawyer. The lawyer's idea is that, okay, really, yes, well, your opponent is a shithead. We'll go and grab his balls. If you talk about the situation, you say, well, your opponent may have a point, so let's hear what he has to say, and can we sit at the same table and listen to, without getting into emotion, what is the issue? Yeah. And that can be with married people as well. And then you can perhaps end up in a divorce or a solution in an arbitration or in a mediation where both feel uncomfortable, but still, you can say hello to each other and
move on. Yeah.
And move on and perhaps do even business with each other.
I think that's really it's a good advice from this interview that there are possibilities to sort out problems by mediation. Very, very good, Tjeerd. Listen, I also want to hear in the final end of the interview. I'd like to just ask you quickly, as COVID-19 is on everybody's mind at the moment, has that affected your business going forward?
Actually, I didn't want to talk about COVID-19 today at all, because I don't think I'm unique by saying that I'm a little bit depressed by this whole shitty COVID thing, which is, I mean, I don't take it easy, and I don't take it for granted that it is like a flu, not at all. However, I think the measures taken by the various governments do raise questions. For instance, here in Holland, there was a discussion about people with a BMI of plus 40. They may have to be called in earlier to get their vaccine, where I say, okay, so if I miss a leg, do I also get perhaps my vaccine earlier? Or, you know, I heard in Ireland, they had this balloon from the politicians where they said perhaps they should vaccinate people who smoke, because smokers also seem to have more.
I have to say, you know, I was just listening to a Danish TV program, and people are getting fed up. There seems to be a whole lot of undue panic somehow, and let's hope we can sort through this, because we have to get to the end of this. Nobody was talking when hundreds of thousands died of a normal flu. But now it's like the whole world is off its.
Well, the problem, as I see it, is that, you know, we have all been in the first wave, shall I say, mentally tackled by the fact that hospitals didn't want to have the ethical discussion about who had to end up in an intensive care bed. So would it be the young guy or the old guy, or the young woman or the old woman? But now the ethical discussion we passed completely, because now we are saying that people with overweight or people who smoke, I mean, as a suggestion by politicians, that they should have priority. With those, you know, with those IDs, you know, the ordinary people say, what kind of BS is this? You know, so I think it should have been much more important to have a steady course, and perhaps less. You know, communication about what has been discussed in the chambers of the politicians. However, this is not the case. Populists are among us, and they want to show the flag how you know, smart they are. So let's stop with it, because it's a negative, vicious circle we're in. However, your question, yes, we notice it has affected our business. I mean, not in the least that. People have to, like we do right now, have to communicate by you know, by screens. The interaction between people when you're sitting at the same table, or you have a beer afterwards, where you talk a little bit more about the business. You give a tit for tat. You exchange some of the gossips, which, you know, you don't exchange gossips quickly at the screen.
No,
at least. I'm from the old school. That is, I mean, I'm not on Twitter and these kinds of things, but that is, I think, one of the things which delay decisions. Also noticeable is, of course, where governments are involved. That I don't know how it was in Denmark or in Sweden, although I know a bit. But here, for instance, last year, March 15th, there was this lockdown, and amazingly enough, the next day, all the courts and official buildings were closed as well. And court cases were just ceased. So if you, for instance, if you would have an arbitrational issue about, you know, a project, that was stopped. I mean, it didn't continue. And these things, of course, you know, have halted decisions on projects. And not only here in Holland, but also in Brazil, also in China, of course, has been affected heavily in the beginning last year. So I can't say it hasn't affected us.
No. I fully understand your sentiment. It's also what I hear from around the world. Listen, it's been very, very interesting to talk to you, Tjeerd. And formally, I wish to thank you very much for your time on this afternoon. You sitting in Holland and me physically in Denmark, unfortunately not on board. But thank you very much, Tjeerd.
Yeah, very good. Thank you for your time, Bo, and thank you for your invitation. And let's hope that that we can soon travel again and plan on meetings.
Definitely, definitely, Tjeerd, we will. And to all our listeners, viewers, and readers around the world, this was yet another, hopefully you find it great interview with this time with Mr. Tjeerd Veldhuizen, the Managing Director of SeaWorks BV Amsterdam, Holland. Stay tuned for more interviews in the weeks to follow. Thank you.